Chitchaitanyamanopistam stapitam yena bhutale svamagapakadamayam dadanti svapadantikam Vandeham shigo shiyodapad shigum vaishnavamsha Shiyopam sarjatan saganaragnatam vitam tam sajivam sadvaitam savdutam parjana saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganalita Shivishakam Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Tyatpate Gopesha Goprakanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kansana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavan Sutta Devi Pranamama Haripriye Vancha Kalpta Vishake Pasan Bevisha Padnam Pavanabhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namini Namaste Saraswata Devi Gaurvani Pacharni Nirvishesha Srinyavad Paskatai Desatarani. Hare Krishna, good evening. We will today discuss the last verses of the 18th chapter. So last session we discussed verses 41 till 48, and these verses describe that all work is controlled by the modes, that but one can become free from the reactions of one's work by performing occupational duties in the Varnashram as a Brahmin, as a Kshatriya, as a Vaishnava, as a Sudra, and at the same time worshipping the Lord through that work. So then one's action does not bear any reaction in the future. And one starts to become purified. That of course, then if one becomes purified, then one comes to the point of thinking, yes, who am I? That why am I suffering? So when one comes to the mode of goodness, these questions become prominent. And so then one is ready to go to the next stage. We must say that the first part, verses 41 till 48, which we discussed last session, they are about karma yoga, working in the varnashram to please the Supreme Lord. So this karma yoga makes one's purified, no reaction, and then one comes to the point of be able to develop knowledge. It says my internet is unstable. Now it's gone. Yeah. Then one comes to the level of knowledge. Goodness means one starts to see things as they are. And then one can use one's intelligence. Intelligence, develop transcendental knowledge, and try to understand the self. The self as different from matter. And that's jnana yoga. So karma yoga one comes to jnana yoga. Of course, we may not forget this is the indirect part. In text 65 and 66, the Lord will say, give it all up, just surrender unto me. That's the direct path. But this is the indirect path. This Jnana Yoga is now described in verses 49 till 55. So 49 is on the screen. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Asakta Buddhi Sarvatra Chitatma Vigata Spriya Naiskamya Siddhim Paramam Sanyasena Dikachati. So, translation. When we self-controlled and unattached and would disregard all material enjoyment, can obtain, by the practice of renunciation, the highest perfect stage of freedom from reaction. So here it is said, yes, one comes then to the stage of taking sannyas, one renounces everything. But that's a high stage. That it said, yeah, asakta buddhi sarvatra. Asakta. That so asakta means detached. That asakta buddhi, unattached intelligence. That yeah. Self-controlling, unattached, and one disregards all material enjoyment. That's a high stage. Lord Krishna in the 3rd chapter and also in the 6th chapter speaks about that one cannot prematurely take sannyas. The heart must be clean, otherwise there are problems, because if one has still material desires, one will be forced to act according to them. And then the sannyas is just a pretension. That so in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, real renunciation means that one always thinks himself a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and therefore thinks that he has no right to enjoy the result of his work, since the part and parcel of the Lord, since he is part and parcel of the Lord, the result of his work must be enjoyed by the Supreme. So that's actual renunciation. That's Krishna consciousness. When you see yourself as a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, then you understand everything belongs to the Lord and is for his enjoyment. Yeah. So, we can say that one whose happiness lies in serving the Lord is actually renounced and has attained the perfectional stage of yoga. So that's a high stage. We will hear in 50. Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame samasena vakantya nishta chechnasa ye para. O son of Kunti, learn from me how one who has achieved this perfection can attain the supreme perfectional stage Brahman, the stage of highest knowledge, by acting in the way I shall now summarize. So attainment of the supreme perfectional stage of Brahman. Brahman means I am Brahmasmi. One realizes I'm spirit soul, not this body. So that is here called the stage of highest knowledge. So that's interesting. We know Brahman realization is not the highest. But what is meant here with Brahman, the stage of highest knowledge, that factually the highest knowledge is understanding, yes, I'm Brahman, but I'm a part and parcel of Parabrahman, Krishna. That is the highest knowledge. And because I'm a part and parcel of Parabrahman, I have to engage in Krishna's service. That's the activity of Brahman. So there is activity in Brahman. That purport. The Lord describes for Arjuna how can one achieve the highest perfectional stage simply by being engaged in his occupational duty, performing that duty for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the highest knowledge of Brahman. Actual perfection of knowledge is in attaining pure Krishna consciousness. That is described in the next verses. That's verse 51 till 53. First is Sanskrit. Buddhya visudaya yukto trityatmanam niyam yacha sabdadim visayam tyaktva ragadvesha vyudasya cha viviktasya vilakyasi yatta vakkaya manasa dhyana yoga paro nityam parahyam samupashvita hankaram balam darpam kamam krodam parikhan vimuchan yamana santa brahmabhuya kalpate. Being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination, giving up the object of sense gratification, being freed from attachment and hatred, one who lives in a secluded place, who eats little, who controls his body, mind and power of speech, who is always in trance, who is detached, free from false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and acceptance of material things, free from false proprietorship and peaceful, such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization. So, this is actual perfection of knowledge attained by Krishna consciousness. So this are all activities which are very important for us. So the point is, if one's intelligence is purified, no material desires anymore, then we accept who we are, Brahman. And we are always in goodness. We are completely detached from sense gratification. We have the qualities which are described here. So that's good for our reflection. We have to develop these qualities to come on a transcendental platform. Of course, we have heard before in chapter 3, text 8:12, these qualities develop if we accept the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and follow his instructions how to engage in devotional service. And by engaging in devotional service, Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavata Kinshana, then the devotee develops all the qualities of the demigods. But this is important. We should use our intelligence to control the mind with determination. With the intelligence, we have to tell the tongue, so that is what you can eat, that's what you need, not more. Otherwise, one engages in, one sees eating as an object of sense gratification, and one must be free from attachment and hatred. One must give up one's likes of I like this and I like that, I don't like that, because that's given to us by the modes of nature, that we like things that give pleasure to the body, and we don't want things that give distress to the body. So we want to give that up, that it's important not, Krishna says in 334, he said, don't come under the control of this attachment and aversion. So instead we have to use our intelligence to do what's good for Krishna, for the Krishna consciousness. That's good for the soul. And avoid what's not good. That's explained in Nectar of Instructions, 6 instructions of things we should not do, 6 instructions of things we should do, verse 2 and 3 of the Upadesamrita. Who eats little, a devotee eats little. What's needed, not more. That because if you eat more, then you cannot control your senses. Forget. Well, the mind will do. You come under control of the mind. So many things happen that we must control our body, mind, and power of speech. Mind must always be controlled. Controlled mind means engage it in devotional service. If you don't engage the mind will engage you and degrade you. Then the mind becomes your enemy in the 6th chapter. So one who is always in trance and is detached, free from false ego. Free from false ego means free from disattachment and aversion. Just act in devotional service. Free from false pride, lust, anger, because from lust comes anger, then greed comes, that free from acceptance of material things, free from false proprietorship, thinking this is mine. That's attachment, and that goes suffering, because everything changes in this world. So all these instructions we need to follow. Very important. You agree, Rukmini?
Yes, Maharaj. But Maharaj, I have a question. Like when I take bitter things, that my vat is high in body, so my body doesn't suit me. I like sweets, and when I take little sweets, I feel good. So I'm confused. It's my liking or attachment to sweets, or my body wants that. So can you please help Maharaj?
Yeah, sure. Sure, that attachment may be there, but you must consider what's good for your body, and you can consult an Ayurvedic doctor. He will tell you what you have to eat and not to eat. And you simply do that. But sometimes, the mind wants sweet. You say, I want sweet, the mind says. And sometimes, if you say no, always no, the mind can become very sour and difficult to live with. What do you do? Well, Prahlad Nanamachi told me, he answered that question and said, yes, you have to deal with the mind like a child. And you say, yes, okay, I will give you a tiny bit. But that's it. So then you give it a little sweet, but not much. But if you become more advanced, that will go. That, but yes, we have to learn to live with it. Does that help?
So certainly it's attachment only, Maharaj. If I'm liking sweets, that's attachment, actually.
That attachment is
And
material.
that
Yes. Yeah.
attachment.
Yeah. That is attachment.
Any suggestion, Maharaj, to come over this attachment? Very strong attachment this I have. The Prabhupada says one attachment to stay in this world.
Yeah, it's a gradual development. You have to work on it. But if you don't work on it, it will cause you a lot of suffering. So be careful. That is good to work on it. That's my experience after 30 years. I went through all these things. Not easy. But we have to overcome and be strong by our spiritual sadhana. Then you can say no. If you are not strong in your sadhana, will be a problem. Good.
Okay.
Purport. When one is purified by intelligence, he keeps himself in a mode of goodness. Thus one becomes the controller of the mind and is always in trance. He is not attached to the object of sense gratification and is free from attachment and hatred in his activities. Such detached person utterly prefers to live in a secluded place. He has no false ego because he does not accept the body as himself. Because he has no bodily concept of life, he is not falsely proud. He is satisfied with everything that is offered to him by the grace of the Lord. And he is never angry in absence of sense gratification. He becomes non-attached to material things, and that is a stage of self-realization of Brahman. So, yeah, oh, my internet connection is again unstable. It's gone again, okay. So he becomes non-attached to material things, and that is a state of self-realization of Brahman. That stage is called Brahma Buddha stage. When one is free from the conception of life, he becomes peaceful and not agitated. This is described in Bhagavad Gita. That's the first Apoyananam Achala Pratishtam 2770 Bhagavad Gita. So now text 54 describes Brahman realization or Brahma Buddha stage. So this Brahma Buddha stage is confidential knowledge. This is confidential knowledge. After that, Lord Krishna will explain more confidential knowledge and the most confidential knowledge. So confidential knowledge is 1855, this verse. More confidential knowledge is 1861, which describes Paramatma realization. And then 65 and 66 is Bhagavan realization, the most confidential. So confidential, more confidential, most confidential. 1, 2, 3. We should remember that. But that's the first. Because Brahma Buddha is the beginning of devotional service practically. Because we have Rupa Goswami, you will learn in Nectar of Devotion described 9 stages of devotional service. First, Shraddha, faith, then Sadhu Sangha, association with the spiritual master and with devotees, receiving an initiation and so on. And then Bhajana Kriya, you start to practice devotional service. But that practice of devotional service is trying to do it. It's like a child imitates the mother and is cooking with a toy kitchen and imitates the mother. So that's what we are doing, because you have devotional service. Devotional is internal, and service is external. But the internal is not yet there, but we do it externally, and that will purify us. And gradually the internal will come. In the beginning is a struggle. The struggle is called Pachana Kriya. And then we become fixed in devotional service, regulated, and that then anartha nivritti. The heart becomes cleansed. And then, when the heart is completely cleansed, we come to Nishta. And Nishta is Brahma Bhuta. That's this platform. And how can you know I'm liberated? It is described here in this verse. Brahma Bhuta Prashanatma. When is Prashanatma? Peaceful. And peaceful, when you are peaceful in mind, na Sastri na Kankshati. You don't lament, and you don't hanker for anything anymore. No material desires, all gone. Then you are peaceful. Samsavishu Bhutishu Mat Bhaktim Labhate Param. Krishna says, then you become equal to all living entities, you see them as spirit, soul, and then you can attain pure devotional service. Because you are liberated. Pure devotional service. Pure devotional service means devotional service without any material desire. Because your material desires are gone. So that's the beginning. So one who is thus transcendently situated at once, my internet is unstable again. Okay. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. Nashursti Nakankshati is equal to all living entities, Sama Sarvesha Bhutesha. And in that state he attains pure devotional service. Mat Bhaktim Labhate Param. So this Brahma Bhuta is a stage we go through. But to come to that Brahma Bhuta, that one must first purify the heart. And that period of purifying the heart is the platform of the Kanishta. That's Kanishta. And that can take 30, 40 years before your heart is pure. So it's a long period that we are Kanishta. But there's a difference between the Kanishta who just begins and the ones who chants 30 years. The one who chants 30 years is nearly liberated. A big difference. And it's not black and white. In that process, van anartha nivritti, gradually you make progress. And the lamenting and the hankering will go gradually. And as it goes, you can think more of Krishna and the devotion will come. So it's not a black and white thing. It is a process. Krishna consciousness is a scientific process. And all the qualities are described here. This is a mile point. If we reach that Brahma Bhuta platform, we enter the Madhyam Adhikar platform of realization. You can act as a Madhyam Adhikar before, who is in the midway devotional service, but does not mean you are. You are Madhyam only when your heart is pure, Brahma Bhuta. That is explained here. Of course, after Brahma Bhuta then Ruchi comes, great taste for Krishna. Then Ashakti, you find Krishna in your heart, Paramatma realization. And then comes the bhava, your love for Krishna start to blossom. And then prema, ecstasy. And that is, yes, Bhagavan realization. So we go also through these stages. So Krishna gives us these 3 stages here. So I read a few points in the purport. One who is engaged in pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord is already in a state of liberation. So that's important. Srila Prabhupada, well, Rupa Goswami says in Nectar of Devotion, Iyayasya aredasye karmanamana sakari nikalas apavashtasu jiva mukta sauchate. One who uses his body, mind, all his convictions and faith, his words in the service of the Lord, is implicitly liberated. Because he acts as a spirit soul just to please Krishna. That does not mean that his heart is pure. But he acts purely. That's just to please Krishna. And therefore is implicitly liberated. He will soon become liberated. That's important. Soon he will become liberated. So someone came to Prabhupada and asked Prabhupada, how many pure devotees are there in the movement? And Srila Prabhupada asked his secretary, how many devotees do we have in ISKCON? So he saw all the devotees as pure devotees. Does not mean that they were on the pure devotional platform, that they were pure in heart, but they were acting on purely. And that's important. In the 70s, when someone joined our movement, he was living in the temple. If you lived outside, you were in Maya. So you lived in the temple and you had to attend all the programs, and during the day out, or magazine distribution or book distribution, and when you joined, you gave all your possessions to the movement. That was sannyas. Today is different, and it's more difficult. But this period in our history of our movement is called the Hare Krishna explosion. We spread all over the world like wildfire, and we distributed millions of books in that period. But now, later on, it became more difficult. Yes, Rukmini.
Maharaj, I forgot my question. You said very nice point of Prabhupada.
Okay, good. So in absolute conception, there is no difference between the served and the servitor. Yes, yet the distinction is there in a higher spiritual sense. So that means if we serve the Supreme Lord, then we are on the spiritual platform. And Krishna is also pure spiritual. So since God is full, a living entity who is engaged in the service in God's service in Krishna consciousness becomes also full in himself. He does not lament or for any material loss or aspire for gain, because he is full in his service of the Lord. Yes. I know this is long ago, but that was devotees in Belgium. Most of them lived in Radhadesh temple, but then the Sankirtan devotees, they went out with a van for 3 weeks, and after 3 weeks they would come back to the temple. And one devotee had really difficulties during these 3 weeks, and was thinking, when I come to Radhadesh, I see the deities of Radha Gopinath, I will pray to them for help. So after 3 weeks they came back, he came before the deities, and he was so enchanted by their beauties and felt so peaceful, he forgot all of his problems. So that's devotional service. We become absorbed in service and we forget his body and all and everything. Because it is said he does not see in the material world as someone higher and someone lower. Higher and lower positions are ephemeral, temporary, and a devotee has nothing to do with ephemeral appearance or disappearance. For him, stone and gold are of equal value. In that stage of existence, the idea of becoming one with the Supreme and annihilating one's individually becomes hellish. The idea of attaining the heavenly kingdom becomes phantasmagoria, and the senses are like serpents where poison teeth are broken. That's the realization of one who is on that platform. The world is miserable for the materially infected person, but for a devotee, the entire world is as good as Vaikuntha in the spiritual sky. So yes, a devotee. We have the six Shastakam, Shanmane, Chamame, Chamamishvari, Bhavata, Bhaktara, Haitritvari. The Lord Chaitanya said, let me take birth after birth of the birth. It doesn't matter. That as long as I can be engaged in your service, pick me up and put me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Yes. Such a state can be achieved by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, who preached pure devotional service in this age. So, by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, that's important. That's by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, we can enter Goloka Vrindavan, the spiritual world. Because who is Lord Chaitanya? Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nai Anga. So Krishna is Radha and Krishna together. Is Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani. And you will learn in Nectar of Devotion, to enter into Vrindavan, you need the mercy of a resident of Vrindavan. So who is the highest resident? Srimati Radharani. So this mercy of Srimati Radharani is given by Lord Chaitanya, and is the Kali Yuga avatar. So we need this mercy, introduce this chanting. So therefore we are worshipping Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, and should never give up, because that's our only hope in this age. And now, so this is the Brahma Buddha stage of self-realization, and that's the beginning of this pure devotional service. Before Nishta, before that Brahma Buddha stage, it's devotional service in practice. But then it becomes devotion spontaneous. So in such a stage, the devotee is always joyful. But we are also joyful if you perform pure devotional service. You do it only for Krishna and not for yourself. You will also become joyful. So, being satisfied in devotional service, he does not desire material enjoyment. He sees all beings equally because he has nothing to do with the ephemeral appearances. Such realization is achieved by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So, now in the next verse, Krishna says, only when you have attained that stage, you can know me. That's the only way to know me. Pure devotional service. Yes, Mother Queen.
Maharaj, every time we see that whatever uh, little devotion we service we perform, that should be pure devotional service and that should be just to please Guru and Gauranga. But Maharaj, my question is that sometime we perform the service, the person who gives us the service, it's me with me that sometimes I try to please that devotee. So will it be a pure devotional service? The
It,
person who designate me the service, I try to please.
it depends on your consciousness.
Okay.
That what's your motive? That so I remember because sometimes we think only of our tradition, but I was 35 years ago. I was working in a hospital department, geriatric department. I was responsible for the. I was responsible for the administration, and there were nuns working, Christian nuns, and they were taking care of the patients, the residents. And I asked them, how from a spiritual view do you see your service? And she told me, when I serve one of the patients, I see it as serving Jesus Christ, personally. So it's the same that if you serve a devotee, see Krishna in the heart of the devotee. So you try to please Krishna's devotee. So be conscious that Krishna is in the heart of the devotee. And if you are conscious of that, then you act out of love, not only for the devotee, but also Krishna in the heart of the devotee. So it depends on your consciousness. It doesn't depend on external situations as the one who gives you the service or the one who expresses the need. No, it's in your heart that, just a moment. Oh yeah, does that help?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Okay, good. So, back 55. Bhaktya mama vijananti yamya sasmi tatvata tatamam tatvatogatva vishate tat anantram. One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. When one is in full conscious of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So Krishna says here, I reveal myself only to one who performs pure devotional service. But then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, yes, this must be done under the guidance of a pure devotee. So Krishna will reveal himself if we perform devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee. Otherwise, the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead will always be hidden. University degrees are not helpful. Devotional service is there, and as long as devotional service exists, there must be God, the devotee, and the process of devotional service. Such knowledge is never vanquished. Even after liberation, liberation involves getting free from the material concept of life. In spiritual life, the same distinction is there, the same individuality is there, but in pure consciousness. So we have heard about the Brahma Buddha platform, the beginning of the spiritual platform, that's liberation. Liberation is described in the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 10, verse 6. liberation is getting free from the gross and subtle body, both. And to spiritualize the subtle body means purification of the heart. If the heart is completely purified, the subtle body is spiritualized and you will not take birth again. So that's good news. So after attainment of the Brahma Buddha stage of freedom from material conception, devotional service begins by one's hearing about the Lord. So that's for those, of course, we are hearing about the Lord from the beginning of the process. That's the direct process. But in the indirect process, they go to karma yoga, jnana yoga, are liberated, and then they have to hear about Krishna, and then bhakti comes. These are the stages. But yeah, that's interesting. When one hears about the Lord, automatically the Brahma Buddha stage develops, and material contamination, greediness, and lust for sense enjoyment disappears. So Srila Prabhupada says this: if you follow the bhakti process and you hear from the beginning, you will gradually come to that Brahma Buddha platform. So no need to do karma yoga, jnana yoga, and so on. That as lust and desires disappear from the heart of the devotee, he becomes more attached to the service of the Lord. And by such attachment, he becomes free from material contamination. In that state of life, he can understand the Supreme Lord. That means devotional service begins after, pure devotional service begins after liberation. And then it continues. Actual liberation is getting free from the misconceptions of life. And that's an important point. Those who come to the Brahma Buddha platform through karma yoga, jnana yoga, they may attain liberation, but they are not yet rid of the misconceptions. They are surely get rid of the misconception that they are the body. And they identify with Brahman. But mostly they have still a misconception. They think I'm Brahman and Brahman is God. No, then you have to realize who you are. Mamaikam Suchi Velike Shiva Buddha, Shiva Buddha. So one must realize that one is a jiva, a part of Krishna. And when you realize you are a part of Krishna, Shiva Bhuta Sanatana, an eternal part of Krishna, then you have to serve Krishna. Then you have to, as Brahman, you have to serve Parabrahman. That's the activity of Brahman. Very important. So Krishna reveals him to the pure devotees. Good. Anyway, we can have discussions of some points, but I think, our time is limited. But a few points that I can say that because in the beginning we heard karma yoga. You perform your activities for the pleasure of the Lord, and you become purified. And then after that we are jnana yoga, that is striving to take sannyas, and renounce the world. So how is that in Krishna consciousness? Do we need to take all sannyas or not? Srila Prabhupada explains, yes, once you are 50 age of 50, the children are grown up, then you have to take vanaprastha. Means go to a holy place or to a temple and serve there. You can go together, man and wife, but you serve there. That's important. Dedicate your full time to Krishna. That's the point. And some who have Brahminical qualities and whose heart is clearly pure, they can take sannyas and preach. So that are Srila Prabhupada's instructions. We should at least, at a certain time, when the children are grown up, take vanaprastha. Okay. Then we go to the next section. Next section will explain the importance of devotional service to understand Krishna. And Krishna describes how we can overcome obstacles by just depending on him and working under his protection. And then he explains the more confidential knowledge of the super soul, and then the most confidential knowledge of surrendering unto him. And that is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. We will start with text 56, Sarvakamanapi sada kaufana matvyapasvaya matprasada vaknauti shasvatam padam avyayam. So, though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee, under my protection, reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace. So Krishna says, he speaks here about his Bhakti, his pure devotee. So, to be free from contamination, a pure devotee acts under the direction of the Supreme Lord or his representative, the spiritual master. So, he is always 24 hours a day, 100% engaged in activities under the direction of the Supreme Lord. And then at the end he is placed in the transcendental abode. So, in Krishna says very clear, you work in Krishna consciousness under my protection. With the help of a spiritual master, you become completely absorbed in me in service constantly, without interruption. Then you go to the spiritual world. So then our consciousness is protected. What we have to protect is our consciousness. That's the only thing we have as a spirit soul, is our consciousness. So Krishna protects our consciousness as long as we are absorbed in him. But if you forget him, it's difficult. So that's the first injunction. Mana, always think of Krishna. Never forget him. That is the point we must reach. If you reach that point, then you go back to Godhead. Factually, when we speak about sannyas for Vaishnavas, sannyas is someone who always lives in a relationship with Krishna. That's sannyas. Then, now we have 57, because that is interesting. These verses 57 till 60, Krishna will tell us that if you do this, then you will if you depend on me, you will be able to overcome all obstacles. But if you don't depend on me and you act out of false ego, you end up in difficulty. So Krishna says, if you do this, you get that result. And if you do that, you get another result. And that's the next verses till 60. So I read first the 3 verses up to 60. I read up to 60 so that you have an understanding of these 3 verses. So in all activities just depend on me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service be fully conscious of me. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If however you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego not hearing me, you will be lost. If you do not act according to my direction and not fight, you will be falsely directed by your nature. You will have to be engaged in warfare. 60. Under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction, but compelled by the work born of your own nature, you will act all the same, O son of Kunti. Yes. So, in 57, so Krishna says, one must act only to satisfy the spiritual master in Krishna by following their instructions. And then, by following their instructions, by completely dependence, while completely dependent on Krishna. So this is what Krishna says here. You follow the instructions of the spiritual master. You do your service, and while you're doing your service, you are completely dependent on Krishna. So learning to depend on Krishna. You will have obstacles and so on, but to overcome them, you depend on Krishna. You have faith in Krishna. Krishna will help me. So Srila Prabhupada in the purpose of 57, when one acts in Krishna consciousness, he does not act as the master of the world. Just like a servant, one should act fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. A servant acting on behalf of the Supreme Master is unaffected by loss, profit and loss. So if one acts according to the direction of Krishna in this book, as well as under the guidance of the representative of Krishna, the result will be the same. But Srila Prabhupada said, so we will get the same result as Arjuna. So it indicates that one has, the Sanskrit word matpara is important. It indicates that one has no goal in life except acting in Krishna consciousness just to satisfy Krishna. So we are learning what it means depending on Krishna in the purport here from Prabhupada. And while working in that way, one should think of Krishna only. I've been appointed to discharge this particular duty by Krishna. We heard this before. One should, however, note that after doing something whimsically, he should not offer the result to the Supreme Lord. Yes. You should follow the instruction of the spiritual master, that how to offer, how to prepare things, and so on. That one should act according to the order of Krishna. This is very important. So depending on Krishna means acting on the order of Krishna. The order of Krishna comes to the disciplic succession from the bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, the spiritual master's order should be taken as the prime duty of life. If one gets a bona fide spiritual master and acts according to his direction, one's perfection of life in Krishna consciousness is guaranteed. And then in 58, Krishna says, if you follow my instructions, then you will be able to pass over all the obstacles of life. But if you don't depend on me and you do your own thing and act out of false ego, you will be lost in difficulty. And then Srila Prabhupada writes, the foolish cannot understand this great freedom from anxiety. For one who acts in Krishna consciousness, Lord Krishna becomes the intimate friend. He gives himself to his friend. His friend who is so devoted, working 24 hours a day to please the Lord. So you may find, if you perform devotional service, some things start to happen you did not expect. That it happened so many times. Therefore, no one should be carried away by the false ego of the bodily concept of life. One should not falsely think himself independent of the laws of material nature or free to act. One should note very carefully that one who is not active in Krishna consciousness is losing himself in the material whirlpool, in the ocean of birth and death. No conditioned soul actually knows what to be done and what's not to be done. But the person in Krishna consciousness is free to act because everything is prompted by Krishna from within and confirmed by the spiritual master. That, yes. So if Krishna accepts his devotee as his most intimate friend and helps him to overcome all these obstacles and anxiety, that, yes. So we should not act out of false ego. That's 59. So Arjuna, at a certain moment he said, we may remember in the end of the first chapter, he didn't want to fight. But Krishna says, even if you do not follow my instructions, by your nature you will be forced to fight. That if you will hear, if you go to the forest for begging and you will hear that Yudhishthira is in difficulty, still you will come and fight because it's your nature. That, but so Arjuna had in his presence the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, he forgot that the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present there and that he was instructing him to fight. So that's the forgetfulness of the conditioned soul. That if we act in Krishna consciousness, Krishna will help us, direct us. Srila Prabhupada says, no one should neglect the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the order of the Spiritual Master, who is a representative of God. One should act unhesitatingly to execute the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that will keep him safe under all circumstances. Good. We are coming to text 61, but before we go there, before we have a break, that because Krishna in this verse said, if you depend on me, then you get that result. If you don't depend on me, and you act whimsically, out of false ego, you will be lost. So we have heard that a few times before, these things. That chapter 3, text 31. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and follow these teachings faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of actions, fruitive actions. That if you follow his instructions, you get that. But if you don't do that, but those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be bereft of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors of perfection. So we heard that before, and I think we heard that also in the 9th chapter, 9 at the end. I think it was 9:30-31. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's in the verse where Krishna speaks about faith. I think it's the 4th chapter. Anyway, there is another place, but another meaning. Questions?
Maharaj, from so long we are hearing that. But my question is that how to act out of false ego. An example, Maharaj, how we act out of false ego.
Well, if you act according to your likes and dislikes, that's false ego. Because likes, attachment and aversion to things in this world, they are born, yeah, that is acting as the body. Attachment, that everything you desire to attain in this world, but it's for the body. The body wants, you want nice food, because but the food is for the body. The body is made of food. So that's attachment to nice food, nice but tastes good. That's false ego. Or attachment to acting for the benefit only of my family, for my nation, all the benefits. That's acting as the body. That's based upon false I and mine. We think we are family members, and so on. But that's all illusion. We are servants of Krishna, the soul is servant of Krishna. So everyone is working out of false ego in this world. And they want profit, to be so-called happy. But they are concerned with their happiness, with the happiness of their family, or further extended for my nation.
Extending myself.
But it's all false ego. That's all material desires are born of false ego. They are for the body and for the pleasure of the mind and so on. Does that help?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Priya Satyavam.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj.
Hey.
Maharaj, I'm just a little bit confused, with the line in the translation that, 1860. It says that under illusion you are now declining to act according to my direction, but compelled by the work born of your nature, you will act all the same.
Yeah.
I am really confused with this line, ma'am.
Well, the Krishna is saying that because that was why Krishna spoke the Gita, because Arjuna did not want to fight. And Krishna wanted him to fight. So because Krishna wanted him to follow his instruction and to help him as an instrument in his mission. But Arjuna did not want that. So Krishna is saying here, even if you say, I'm not fighting, still you will fight, because it's your nature as a Kshatriya, your material nature. You will feel the desire to fight and help your brothers, and still you will do it. But it's better to do it under my order. Then it's spiritual. And then, yeah, that's the point made here.
So Maharaj, how does it apply to normal general public, or however we want to say it? Because if I have been thinking on this point since yesterday. If everything that we do karma, we do everything, it is all sanctioned by the Supreme Lord at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's all sanctioned if he wants that, but the difference is our desire, why we do it. That's the point.
So the cause of suffering is, Maharaj, the desire that we have.
Yeah, right. You get to the point. That's Krishna consciousness, changing our desire. The desire to do things for Krishna, that gives liberation and happiness. And the desire to do things for myself, that creates problems.
So how does Manoj this year 1860 apply? If you want to apply it in our personal lives, how should we adapt this?
Yeah, we should always think before we do something, is my spiritual master going to be pleased with what I'm doing? And that's the only thing you have to do. The instruction of the spiritual master is the same of Krishna. Is Krishna going to please with that? Is that his instruction? Where does Krishna say that in Bhagavad Gita? Where does my spiritual master say that? Don't do anything which is not sanctioned. Therefore you have to know the scriptures. In the 16th chapter at the end, Krishna is said, the difference between a devotee and a demon is a devotee knows the scriptures and follows the scriptures and will not do anything else. So that's the point. That's okay? Good.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you.
Okay. We will now have a pause moment. It's, I think, 1:15, yeah? Okay, we have a pause till 8:30. In 15 minutes. We come together again and we will go to 66 today, that's the summit of Bhagavad Gita, and tomorrow then we will have one more lesson so we will resume in 50 minutes. Thank you.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we continue with text 61, but before we continue, that I found the other contradiction, the two sides. If you do this, Krishna says, you get that result. If you do that, you get another result. That's the end of the 4th chapter. Chapter 4, text 40. Yeah, it's text 39 and 40 of the 4th chapter. 39. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge, and having achieved it, he quickly attains a spiritual peace. So he gets spiritual peace. But in text 40, but ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness, they fall down. For the doubting soul there is no happiness neither in this world or in the next. So different results that, of course, you find that also in Shis Upanishad. There, these verses use the same type that if you do this, you get that result. If you do that, get another result. If you worship what is supreme, you get one result. If you worship what's not supreme, you get another result. So Krishna does that a few times here in the Gita. And now text 61, that's the more confidential knowledge, the Paramatma realization. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Ritisayuna Tishtati Brahmama Sarva Bhutani Yantrodani Maya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities while seated as on a machine made of material energy. So, here Krishna says clearly, I'm in the heart of all living entities, and I'm directing their wanderings. So, in the purpose Prabhupada writes, after changing bodies, the living entity forgets his past deeds, but the supersoul, as the knower of the past, present, and future, remains the witness of all his activities. Therefore, all the activities of the living entities are directed by the supersoul. The living entity gets what he deserves, and is carried by the material body, which is created in the material energy under the direction of the supersoul. As soon as a living entity is placed in a particular type of body, he has to work under the spell of the bodily situation. A person seated in a high-speed motor car goes faster than one seated in a slower car, though the living entities, the drivers, may be the same. So he may work according to his past desires. Therefore we get the body, so that we can fulfill further our desires as we deserve. So the living entity is not independent, but should not think himself independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that we heard before different times, we are not the doer. Krishna is the doer. We are also a doer, but one of the 5 factors. So the individual is always under the Lord's control. So we desire, but Krishna sanctions that. Therefore, a devotee usually says yes, that if it speaks about the future, yes, if Krishna willing, it will happen. But that depends on Krishna. Therefore, one's duty is to surrender. And that is the injunction in the next verse. And the next verse is 22. So Krishna says, according to how the living entity deserves and desires, the supersoul gives him a machine, a body, by which is under control of material nature, by which a living entity can then try to fulfill all his desires. So Krishna is the servant and gives the body, and he remains within the body, and to make sure that it works according to the laws of nature. So, 62. O sign of Bharat, surrender unto him utterly. By his grace you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme and eternal abode. So, Krishna says, you should surrender, Arjuna. That is what you should do. That will relieve you from all miseries of material existence. And not only will you be released from all, miseries of in this life, but at the end you go back to the spiritual world. So that's the best thing for you to do. So Krishna advises Arjuna, you surrender. But he says, that's my advice, but you are free to decide. So that's what Krishna says in 63. Itite jnanamakyatam guyat guyat ramaya vimshrisheta asesena yatishasi tataku. Thus I have explained to you knowledge, still more confidential. Deliberate on this fully, and then do what you wish to do. So, that is our free will. That Krishna advises, Arjuna, you surrender, but he does not interfere with the minute independence of the living entity. Therefore, he gave Krishna has given instructions to Arjuna, and it's up to Arjuna to do what he wants. So, ititi hyam akyatam guya guyat ramaya vimshishita sheshina yatishasi tatako ichasi. Now you have heard everything, do as you like. That up to you to decide. So it's also our decision, what are we going to do? And that decision we must take every moment of our lives. Am I going to follow Krishna's instruction, or am I going to do what I want? If you do what I want, yes, you are under the modes of nature. If you do what Krishna wants, then Krishna protects you and brings you back to the spiritual world. So every moment of the day we have to take that decision. What I'm going to do that now, is that Krishna's instructions? That am I going to offer the fruit, or I enjoy it like this and not offer? That then you get karma. Then you are a thief, Krishna says, stena, one who does not offer his fruit. That in 7, yeah. Anyway, so Srila Prabhupada writes, as you like, you may act. Indicate that God does not interfere with the little independence of all living entity. The best advice imparted to Arjuna is to surrender unto the super soul seated in the heart. By right discrimination, one should agree to act according to the order of the super soul. That before surrendering, one is free to deliberate on this subject as far as intelligence goes. That is the best way to accept the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such instruction comes also to the spiritual master, the bona fide representative of Krishna. But now Krishna is going to give him the most confidential instruction. And he tells it to Arjuna, because you are my friend, I'm speaking to you my supreme instruction, the most confidential of all. Hear this from me. So he will give the most confidential knowledge now, how to surrender to him. And what is this instruction? It's Man mana bhavamat bhakto machi mam namaskaram mama vesha satyam te pradicani priyosime. Man mana, always think of me. That is the first instruction. Most important instruction, because man mana, and Krishna has given so many instructions in Bhagavad Gita, how to think of him in this world. Man mana. If you think always of Krishna, then Bhava Mad Bhakto, then you become Krishna's devotee. And becoming Krishna's devotee means Madhyayi, You are going to worship him, and Mam Namaskara, you offer him respects. And then Krishna says, then you will come to me because you are my very dear friend. So this is the highest instruction. This is what surrender means. Yes, that's Lord Chaitanya said, yes, Yare Deke Tare Kara Krishna Upadesh. Whenever you meet, you speak about Krishna. And what should we tell them? This verse and the next. That is what we should tell them. That worship Krishna. That think of Krishna, worship Krishna, chant Krishna, Krishna's names, and worship Krishna. So in text 50, 65 and 66 is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. But the most confidential knowledge is not finished there. It goes to verse 69. We will see that tomorrow. It's not only thinking of Krishna. Krishna does not only want us to think of him, to worship him, to offer him respect, to perform devotional service, but he also wants us to preach, to give this knowledge to others. That he will explain in the verses thereafter. And he will say, there is no one more dear than the preacher of this Krishna consciousness. But you cannot preach to the atheist, those who are envious of Krishna. Otherwise, you can preach to everyone, those who are ignorant, but not those who are envious. These are the instructions of Krishna, the main instruction. And that's the most confidential part, that one should become a pure devotee and always think of Krishna and always act for him. So all our daily activities should be in connection with Krishna. We must, and Srila Prabhupada gives a very important instruction to all of us in the middle of the purport. We should arrange our life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours we cannot do anything other than think of Krishna. That's our way, how we have to manage our day. So everyone who follows the path of Arjuna becomes a very dear friend to Krishna and obtains the same perfection as Krishna. So one should fix his mind on the original form of Krishna. One should not divert his attention to other forms of the Lord, Srila Prabhupada writes. We must fix our mind on the form that was before Arjuna. So concentration of the mind on the form of Krishna, that's the most confidential knowledge. And Krishna told it to Arjuna because he is his friend. So the most confidential knowledge is that we must mold our lives in such a way that we think of Krishna at every step, and then we will go back to Krishna. And now the last verse, 66, which we all know. Saudam Pisham Mamkam Samvacham Tam Savapabhyo Mokshishyama Chicha. Krishna says, surrender unto me. Forget about all these yogas. You take to devotional service. Manmana Bhavmat Bhakta. That the direct path, not the indirect path. The indirect path may be useful for those who don't accept yet Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they will help, they come. And one day they will understand that because they are too envious, they cannot understand yet that confidential truth. So all forms of religion, yoga and dharma, they are all meant to gladly come to devotional service. Therefore, you surrender to Krishna, go directly. And that's the perfection of spiritual life. Go straight to the perfection, no deviation. And Krishna promises us in this verse that he will protect us against all sinful reactions that, yes. So, interesting is, Krishna says, surrender unto me. So, forget all these so-called religions and lower paths, because it is misleading. Take to the direct path. And explaining the direct path begins in the Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavad Gita ends here, but then how to surrender, how to do that, that's explained in the Bhagavatam. And the Bhagavatam starts with making the difference between Kaitava Dharma, cheating religion, and real religion. In 112 of the Bhagavatam is verse Dharma prachita kataiva tra paramani matsam satam vityam vastavam natra vastu shivadam tapo trayam mulanam Shimad Bhagavate Mamune Kete Kim Vaparer Ishvara Sarayat Avrutyata Tra Kritibi Susritibi Teksanat. So Dharma Prachtika Vatra. It completely rejects all religious activities which are materially motivated. Because this, yes, and that's the highest truth, materially motivated. That those who are going for Brahman realization, they want to be free from suffering. That's a material motive. And they want to become Brahman, God. That's a serious material desire. And the yogis, they want mystic powers. That's all materially motivated. But no, the highest truth is here in the Bhagavad Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam. But that can only be understood paramo nirmatsaram satam. That can only be understood by the satam, the pure devotees who are nirmatsaram, without envy. And that is what Arjuna says. Krishna tells to Arjuna, I tell you this, I give this supreme instruction, because you are non-envious. So, if we become non-envious, Krishna will instruct us also from within the heart. It does the same thing. It's not different with Arjuna. No. So text purport 66, a few points here. Now, in summarizing Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that Arjuna should give up all the poses that have been explained to him. He should simply surrender to Krishna. That surrender will save him from all kinds of sinful reaction, for the Lord personally promises him to protect him. So one can say, why does Krishna explain all these things and now he says forget them? He could have made the Bhagavad Gita shorter. Forget all these things and they could have straight to the point, right? Then we would have a small Bhagavad Gita. But why is he explaining that? Because there are those who do not accept him as Supreme Personality of Godhead. who think that Brahman is supreme, and so on. And he wants them to also advance by study Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, some verses can be interpreted in different ways, but only his devotees know the real meaning. And that's the real meaning, because that's the direct meaning of the verses. In personalist, by woordschuggelery, they try to get different meanings out, but then it comes in conflict with other verses which they cannot explain, and that it distorts the quintessence of the Gita. And that's one reason, but another reason is that we can learn from the other yogic processes. There are many instructions which can also be applied in devotional service, and which help us to understand devotional service. Because we are going to these stages also, even if we take the direct part, at a certain moment, by devotional service, the heart becomes pure, and then we come to Nishta, Brahman realization, and then further, that Ruchi, Asakti, Paramatma realization. Then we see Krishna in the heart and the spiritual world in the heart. And then Bhagavan, Prema, love for Krishna. So we are going also to these stages. And if Krishna says, in the 6th chapter, he has explained in 6.5 that Udret Atmanatman Atmanan Avasatyat Atmeva Atmanavandura Atveva Ripur Atmana. With the mind, you can degrade yourself or uplift yourself. The mind can be your friend or your enemy. Then Bandharat Manastasya and Atman Chatmana Chita and Atmastu Satritve Vartatatma Maiva Satruvat. The mind is your friend when it's controlled, and the mind is your enemy when it's uncontrolled. So a devotee understands these verses. Yes, my mind is controlled when it's engaged in devotional service, and it's uncontrolled if I act according to material desires for sense enjoyment. Because Bogasyara Pashaktana, it disturbs the mind. So it gives deeper insights in the process of devotional service also, because it's a process with stages. So these are reasons why these different yogas are explained. Even if someone is not free from sinful reactions, simply by the process of surrendering to Sri Krishna, is automatically freed. There is no need for strenuous effort to free oneself from sinful reactions. That's explained in the 6th canto of the Bhagavad Gita, of the Srimad Bhagavatam in the beginning. There is no need for atonement, if you may, that you continue your devotional service. It will purify you. So one may perform a particular occupational duty according to his position in social order, but if by executing his duty one does not come to the point of Krishna consciousness, all these activities are in vain. So that's in the Bhagavatam also. If one performs his duty in the Varnashram, not for Haritoshnam, not for pleasing Krishna, all the thing is Shrama Eva Kevalam, useless time, waste of time. One should be confident that in all circumstances Krishna will protect him from all difficulties. So that's the faith we need. We must learn to depend on Krishna. Of course, we should always remember, if we pray to Krishna, Krishna is not our order supplier. We should learn to be satisfied in all circumstances with what Krishna gives us. So equal in failure and success. Failure and success is determined by Krishna. There is no need of thinking how one should keep the body and soul together. Krishna will see to that. One should always think himself helpless and should consider Krishna the only basis for his progress in life. As soon as one is sincerely engages himself in devotional service of the Lord in full Krishna consciousness, at once he becomes freed from all contamination from material nature. So Krishna purifies us. He is the purifying agent. If we have Krishna in the mind, he washes our heart. One should be attracted by the beautiful vision of Krishna. His name is Krishna because he's all attractive. One becomes attracted by the beautiful, all-powerful, omnipotent vision of Krishna. When we become attracted, is fortunate. One who is attracted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself is the most perfect transcendentalist. So that attraction is important. Getting the param dristvani vartate, which comes if our hearts start to become purified. The particular word used here, masucha, don't fear, do not hesitate, do not worry, is very significant. One may simply surrender to Krishna. One may, but such worry is useless. Yeah, that. So, do you have any realizations when you do what Krishna says, that Krishna takes care of you? Someone has realizations want to share? No?
Maharaj, कहना है?
Yeah, sure.
Maharaj, I think that everything is Krishna's blessing. Everything what I have, that's actually Krishna's blessing only. Whatever I have, when I need something, I get. So that's Krishna's blessing every time. The service is Krishna's blessing. Everything is Krishna's blessing in life.
Yeah.
We were thinking about this course that so many exalted sannyasis, we cannot have your divine association. It was out of reach. So it is great blessing. So Krishna is very merciful. Online we are getting association. So many things. Everything.
Yeah, we must understand Krishna's blessings. That what is Krishna's blessing? Someone on the train came to Srila Prabhupada and he asked, please bless us. And Srila Prabhupada said, you don't want my blessings. But the man insisted, please bless me. And Srila Prabhupada said, okay. He said, and he was pointing to Tamala Krishna Goswami, who was sannyasi. And he said, this is my blessing. Do you still want it? And the man went away. So we must understand what's blessing. Blessing, we say it's Krishna's mercy when something nice happens, but when we get suddenly trouble, we don't see it as Krishna's mercy. But it is also Krishna's mercy to purify us. Krishna gives us exactly what we need. And that faith we must have in Krishna. Then Krishna reciprocates in ways beyond our imagination. Good. Then we will end here, and tomorrow we will finish the Gita. It's not yet finished. There are still one lesson and some important points in the conclusion. I'm looking forward to see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Jai
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.